But over the weekend, the commissioner of the National Football League, Roger Goodell, basically said, my bad, we were wrong. Now, look, you and I could admit to mistakes, major and minor. Okay? We can admit to mistakes. But when you're a man in your 50s who is worth, I don't know, over $100 million, you're making $40 million a year, you're worth over $100 million, you're running the most successful sport in the country, maybe the world, and seemingly you don't have to either, I guess, make a statement or even say you're wrong to offer up that you were wrong on something that you took a hard and fast stance with. I think it's a pretty big breakthrough moment. Actually, I think it's a seminal moment. Because even though this is, in truth, a major societal issue, right? It's interesting. Saturday, I was at the beach. I was in Newport Beach, a beach called Blackie's Beach. And just so you know, it's called Blackie's because the sand has like some oil in it. So there's some black sand in it. Right? It's called Blackie's Beach. And I just took my son there because he has a friend who's a girl and two of her other little girlfriends. So she's technically his girlfriend, but they're just friends. And they wanted to surf. So we get there at, 7:15 in the morning, and they were going to surf until about 9. And at 9 o'clock, there's a massive gathering. And if you know anything about surf culture, there's something called a paddle out. And a paddle out is usually reserved, when somebody dies. And people say nice things, and everybody splashes the water. They bring specific kinds of flowers, sunflowers. They throw them in the middle. Everybody stays out there for a while, and then you come in. So they were going to have a massive Black Lives Matter paddle out. And I listened to this woman speak. She was unbelievably eloquent, and she really brought me to thought, right? And what she talked about was this. She said, when the quarantine happened, I think it happened so that we slowed down and we started paying attention to one another, our families, our neighbors. Think about what you've done during quarantine, right? You've probably gone on more walks. And you realized, hey, my neighborhood's pretty nice for going for a walk. Dogs are the happiest they've ever been. Why? Because there are people are taken for walks, and then there's other dogs out there. You go and ride your bikes with your kids. I have seen during the 3 months of quarantine in Southern California, I've seen kids go from training wheels to now jumping off curbs and riding. Like you're watching kids progress every day. Things you'd never do in the past. Why? Because you were never home. Nor did you ever pay attention. Nor did they have a chance to teach their kids how to ride a bike. But what she said, and this was really interesting, was it gave us a chance to pay attention. And by her estimation, it's pretty interesting what happened to George Floyd. We're now paying attention to something we were told for a long time was a problem and had been happening far too often. And so when you combine quarantine with what happened to George Floyd, and by the way, I think the reaction to it from not just the police department, but the government, specifically 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, we start to pay attention to all the things that are going on. Look, it's not just about Black Lives Matter, police brutality. That's a big part of it. It's also about the president. It's also about weapons. It's also about, have you had discussions about racism, discrimination with your children, with your friends in the past? I think eventually it'll be about not did you protest, but did you actually decide to register and vote? Like all of these things, we have time to pay attention to ourselves, and we start to realize we are reaping what we sowed. But to have Roger Goodell say, hey, I was wrong. We were wrong. That is a seminal moment because even though it's technically about George Floyd and it's about others in the past or in the recent past, the one professional athlete who it's most related to or most about is Colin Kaepernick, who is an NFL player who is no longer playing in the NFL. And of course, his protest led to the NFL saying, hey, if you don't protest, and if you do, just don't come out of the locker room. And of course, there's what President Trump said and what Jerry Jones said and all these other things. It's not about football, but football went hand in hand with these protests. And it's where our awareness of the problem started, in sports at least. Right? Ferguson was a national story, but it was the awareness of the issues were brought to a head by Colin Kaepernick kneeling. You can say whatever you want about him. That I believe is accurate and kind of inarguable. The other part is, and this is a you reap what you sow thing. I've said this about President Trump. Okay. That was Goodell saying that says you not only lost us, you lost all of our sponsors. Because the big reason that people who are super powerful don't pick a side is you can't run a business if you lose your sponsors. You just can't. And if you want to be the guy that dies on that hill of, I will either not say anything or I will, support divisiveness, you're going to die lonely on that hill, especially when Goodell in the NFL. But Goodell is not only saying he can't do that without the approval of the owners, and the owners wouldn't let him say that unless they heard from enough of their sponsors, of their corporate sponsors that approved it. He is a figurehead. So I'm not sure that you're underselling massively, I think people are, how big that was. And it was a middle finger to the guy who occupies the office of 1600. But here's the thing. I will give Trump this amount of credit. He ran on a platform of divisiveness. And now, 3.5 years in, all the things he said he would do, he's kind of done. Right? Has he built the wall that he wanted to build? No. Some of it is just refurbishing the wall, but some of it is new wall. He's done that. It doesn't mean, I'm not saying I vote for him. I'm just telling you, go back and look at the things he said he would do. He did. Including divide our country. And maybe in his effort to divide us, he has. He's pitted himself against the rest of us. Right? Look, I'm somebody who I went on TV and I believe this to this day. You are absolutely positively allowed to have your own belief on what the flag means when the national anthem plays. Absolutely. Drew Brees wasn't wrong for what he believed in the national anthem. The mistake was not having empathy for understanding what the protest was about and the timing of what he was saying and how it would relate to this upcoming season in the NFL. And he showed no openness to having a discussion. Right, this is what I believe, and that's it. Which, look, my biggest problem with politics, honestly, is that where we do this whole thing, his voting record 25 years ago, 25 years ago, think of yourself, if you're old enough to remember yourself 25 years ago, think of yourself 25 years ago, your thoughts, your beliefs, hopefully you evolve, hopefully you change. Life experiences should change you as a human being. I kind of hope you don't think the same thing now that you did 25 years ago. If you did, then you need some self-reflection. You need to check out this thing called the internet, do some reading, do some research. A lot has happened since then. A lot has happened since then. But, I sit here and look and I'm amazed. Now, I'm also going to tell you that I have so many friends that are African-American that I've listened to and asked them about. And I do think one of the things that is being misportrayed is this sense that, LeBron James, they don't like us. I don't know. I see the ratio of these awful racists that we're trying to eliminate from our society to the peaceful protesters and realize that it's like hundreds of thousands to one. Think of the actual ratio of people who want positive change as opposed to people who don't. we're in a much different place than we were 4 years ago, which is a good thing. Are we where we're supposed to be? No. Are we perfect? No. Is there time for reform and reflection and growth? Yes. And was the NFL too late? No. No. It's never too late to say, hey, you know what? My bad. I'm sorry. And to look into the camera and tell the country, you're wrong. The most powerful man in all of sports, Roger Goodell, I'm not sure that we have yet grasped the seminal moment that took place this weekend and what it's going to mean, what it's going to mean in the world of sports. Look, does the cynic in me think he said it because every NFL player is going to kneel week 1 of the season? Probably. They didn't want to be just a terrible look to be the one sports league that doesn't take a stand against racism? Probably. But I also think that he went to a place when he says that he was wrong. We were wrong. That he didn't have to go. Not necessarily as strongly. And to that, it not only has to be commended, it has to be earmarked, and it tells you where we are and how big this is.